Hey, Waffle Guy here. I'm gonna be doing something quite different from my usual I play a game and commentate videos or whatever. So I have recently just finished my second Ironman attempt. And I've been wanting to make a tier list for a while, but I didn't really feel qualified to do so. Um Now something I'm gonna say right off the bat before we start this is I'm gonna be trying to mostly base this tier list off of an Ironman run specifically. Most tier lists that I watch anyways are mostly just, can you play decently efficiently? You can reset, but would this unit be worth resetting for? Obviously in an Ironman you can't do that. So survivability in general, I would say, is going to be a higher factor on. It's going to be given a bit more weight, I would say, on this tier list. Now, now for the record, I don't know. I don't have an extremely good idea of where I'm going to put my unit with these guys yet, because there's like 50 something units here. I forget. I think like 54. Anyways, so what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so survivability, as I said, it's gonna be way more heavily than other tier lists. I don't know if this will end up being much different than like most tier lists. I guess we'll find out as we go along. So I guess we'll start. So I'll briefly describe what I have this weird habit of right-clicking. Anyways, I'll start by quickly describing the tiers. God tier. I mean, they're the units that are like, you know, incredibly good, like very, very good. Best, you know, easily best in the game. You know, pretty self-explanatory. Staple for most of the game. Couldn't find a better name for these tiers, honestly. So stable for most of the game. They're not god tier, but from the time you get them till the end of the game, they're gonna be like really solid units. All just yeah, they're just gonna be really solid units. They're not gonna be they're not gonna be broken like the god tiers, but you're gonna be very likely to put them in your you're gonna be like very tempted to put them in your deployment slots and that kind of thing. Used in a lot of chapters. It's basically staple for most of the game, A tier, whatever you want to call it. But like, there are a few chapters where it's like, I don't know. I think I'll bench him for this chapter, and then I'll probably use him next. Stuff like that, and not necessarily because of deployment slots, but more so just because like something like, say, the terrain doesn't complement whatever their skills are very well. Stuff like that. Basically, B tier is just die at A tier. I might good replacement unit. So in an Ironman, when your units die, you don't reset. That's the whole point. So what happens when, say, like, for example, in my first Ironman, I lost Lance in Chapter 2, and I did not reset. So I need a replacement unit. Well, I ended up getting Noah in Chapter 7, and Noah did pretty good. Just as an example, we'll get to him when we'll get to him. I want to mostly go in, like, order here when we go over the characters, but that's an example. Really niche. Basically, they're kind of meh in most circumstances, but there's like that one chapter, or there's like that one chapter where they could be really useful for like a specific reason. like, I've never gone to Sakai, so I'm not gonna be weighing that too heavily. I guess I'm gonna have to assume that you're going to Ilya, since, well, Ilya's the easier route anyways. So most people are gonna want to go there. But like in the Sakai route, Douglas apparently is apparently really good has really good walling opportunities in the guidance chapter on that route. That's just an example. Just a meme. I mean, I'm not sure how to describe this list other than they're just really bad units. Just really bad. And like unlike the really niche category, there is zero reason to use them outside of haha funny meme. And then specific utility. Utility is just basically like, sorry, it's basically like stuff like right away I'm gonna put Merlinus here. Merlinus, you can't, putting him on a tier list is very difficult, so I'm just gonna cop out and put him in specific utility. I'm gonna put the thieves here as well. Actually. Let's see, where's Kath? Now I am gonna order within these tiers. So with this in mind, I'm gonna put Astor on top. He's definitely the best out of the three units because he's just good combat-wise, and the stuff that Chad can get. Like, he can get us, like, before you get Astor, you can get a Silver Lance, which is definitely nice, but it's not required. Well, I mean, nothing is, of course, but, like, you know what I mean, like, you can go without the Silver Lance. It's really nice to have, but if you didn't have Chad and you couldn't get the stuff in the chest, you know, like if Chad died early or something, because that could happen, then Astor's where it's at. And in Kath, she's redundant. If she wasn't the thief, I would put her in the replacement unit tier, because some people say she's the worst unit in the game, and I heavily disagree just because she's a thief. In the context of an Ironman, Chad could die. I mean, he dies in like one shot from everything at the start of the game. And you can get overconfident with Astor and he dies. You know, if you get unlucky while dodge tanking or something like that. And, you know, Kath is there. She doesn't show up super late. But yeah, these are all the tiers, and I guess I've already filled in the utility tier pretty much. I can't think of anything else. Merlinus, I guess I'll talk about Merlinus before we go on to the more normal units, I guess. So Merlinus, the reason why he's so difficult to put in a tier list is because he's basically playing a different game than the rest of the units. The rest of the units are like, okay, we run around, we carry weapons, and, you know, sometimes healing items or whatever, and we attack things. Merlinus never attacks things, but he's not supposed to. Instead, he just carries your shit. And the thing is, he carries your shit regardless of whether he's deployed or not. Now, if he's now, there is definitely a debate to be had on whether he can be deployed. That's definitely an option. Merlinus dies to a stiff breeze because you have no good way of leveling him up. Because chances are you're not willing to have Merlinus dodge tank or just take hits and healing or whatever for 100 rounds before he levels up once. Like, you know, you're not going to do that crap. I don't even know what his growths are, and it doesn't matter because they're irrelevant. But you can deploy him to have him act as bait for the AI. That's actually pretty valuable in itself. Especially in an Ironman. Like, say, you got you got two enemies that are like about to attack, I don't know, Roy or whatever. And if both of those enemies hit Roy, then he's dead, and your Iron Man is dead as well. But hey, oh yeah, and there are no units that can intervene except for Merlinus, who happens to be nearby. You can have him go next to Roy. One of the enemies will attack Merlinus, kill Merlinus, in quotation marks, and then kill Roy. And the best part is, Merlinus doesn't actually die. In fact, whatever stuff is in his regular inventory as opposed to Convoy, he doesn't even lose those. So there's no drawback. So aside from deployment slots, there's no drawback to deploying him. Now, deployment slots is definitely a thing. But if you have a bunch of units, if a bunch of your units are dead, and you don't have enough good units to fill in deployment slots, there's no reason not to deploy Merlinus. It can also help with inventory management. You can do like convoy warping, that kind of thing, when you shop, I would imagine would be very useful when you're buying stuff like killer lances, and that kind of thing. Anyways, that's enough of the weirdos. We'll move on to normal units. I'll talk about the dancers later. I don't know if they should go here or whatever. Anyways, we'll start with our boy, or Roy, our boy Roy. So I could just put him here immediately, but honestly, it's very difficult to put Roy in a tier because I'm tempted to put him in good replacement unit, which is basically C tier. But like, obviously he's not a replacement unit for anything. He's a main lord. So next best thing is like really niche or using a lot of chapters. But using a lot of chapters, it suggests that Roy gets used a lot. Not really. He's not. Here's the thing. Obviously, Roy is required to be deployed in every chapter in the game. But that doesn't mean you want him to. So, what are the problems with Roy? Why do people call him a bad unit? Well, a lot of people call him a bad unit because, well, I mean, we'll start with the most minor thing. He's sword locked. Now, in most other FE games, especially DBA, that would be a huge blow to him, but FE6 is different. In FE6, being sword locked isn't really that big of a deal. Because the thing is, the real meta, instead of having 1-2 range, like most other FEs, the meta is accuracy, pretty much. You want to be accurate. High attack power is also nice, but accuracy is where it's at. And something that people neglect to talk about with Roy is his rapier. His rapier is, I believe, aside from the Divine Stone that Faye has, it's the most accurate weapon that you can get in the entire game. Well, there's also the Binding Blade, which I will get into the Binding Blade in a second. That's its own can of worms. I'll talk about that. So, the rapier. The rapier, admittedly, is not as good as it is in other Fire Emblems. Like, for example, Eliwood in FE7. His rapier has 40 uses. Roy's only has 25, but keep in mind, in Chapter 7, you get a second rapier. So, that's effectively 50 uses. So the rapier, it has the same might as the iron swords, and Roy's strength is pretty bad. Now, granted, I did get massively strength screwed in my last Ironman, so I might be a little biased, but Roy's strength is not impressive, like, at all. It's actually pretty bad. And that's the thing. While Roy does have, potential in his level up to get good level ups, you could also end up like me and get screwed in a stat like strength. And that really fucks him over for pretty much the rest of the game. And the rapier, I mean, Oh yeah, I haven't talked about the plus 10 crit on the rapier, and the reason why is because I don't really want to consider that as a factor too heavily. Plus 10 crit is not that big of a deal. You'll get a lucky crit every so-and-so, but meh. And keep in mind, the rapier, your first one anyways, only has 25 uses, and you have to go through arguably the toughest chapters in the entire game. You have to deal with chapter 4, which I'd say is the most useful chapter for Roy's rapier easily. But even then, Roy gets screwed over by the nomads because for some reason, nomads, actually same goes for troubadours and valkyries, are not susceptible to the rapier. Only cavaliers and paladins. And yes, there's a bunch of cavaliers in chapter 4, but aside from that, you don't see a lot of rapier use. I personally use the rapier in most chapters just for accuracy, just because I can. And that's another thing. How often do you want Roy to fight? Not too often, I don't think. You don't want Roy fighting too often, because in an Ironman, if he dies, well, that's it. So you're gonna want to keep him all safe and crap. You might even want to give him the angelic robe in chapter 4, just to help his survivability a bit more. So ultimately he's more of a hindrance than a help, I would say, and that sucks. Now, I guess and two more things. One is the light brand. So in chapter 8, you can get the light brand. It's the only one you get for the rest of the game, I'm pretty sure. It has 25 uses, which is not a whole lot. But it has 1-2 range, and at 2 range, it does a flat 10 damage. Roy, I would say, is the best unit that can make good use of it. Because you don't want Roy to be able to get counterattacked. There's a lot of one-range enemies, of course. So you can use the light brand. The downside is that the light brand weighs 9, and he has a constitution. Roy has a constitution of 6. So he gets weighed down by 3, and his speed stat isn't very good in the first place, so he actually risks getting doubled when you use the light brand. But as long as you're super careful, and he can make good use of the light brand. And of course, you can trade it around as needed. It's not like only he can use it. But yeah, as I said, more of a hindrance than a help. I'm gonna put him in really niche, and the reason why is just simply because he has his uses, but like, he's more of a hindrance than a help. The fact that he's force deployed does not help him. It's actually the main reason people consider him bad. I think that he's whatever. He's not awful, I don't think, but he is pretty bad in my eyes. Alright, next up, Marcus. Pretty easy god tier. Now with that being said, I'm gonna actually rank him a little higher than some people normally would, because this is an Ironman tier list. So, Marcus is like the definition of a Jagan. For those of you who aren't aware, a Jagan is like that super powerful, usually paladin that you get at the start of the game. And he can get you out of rough situations. But Marcus here, like Jagan himself, Jagan is like the paladin in the first game. Anyways, he drops off quite heavily. The reason being, he has god-awful growths. His bases are carrying him through the early game. But the early game happens to be arguably the hardest part of the game. So, and you need to keep as many units as you can so you can get through the rest of the game. Because it's not like the rest of the game is a cakewalk. Like chapter 21, for instance, that's like endgame, is a notoriously long and difficult chapter. Because of all the wyverns riding around. And you want, and some of the early game units that you get are like gonna be really good, or just really solid units that you're gonna want to keep for the rest of the game. And if they die in the early game, then obviously you can't use them. So Marcus here is a fantastic help to help you with that. He does your typical Jagan things. He uses, at the in like chapter 1, it's almost mandatory for you to use them in chapter 1. Use his iron sword to weaken enemies, and your more frail units like Roy or Alan or Lance or whoever can can finish them off, get the kill EXP, and then you can be on your merry way. And another thing is, if Marcus himself dies, and like this is kind of less of a. So if Marcus himself dies in like when you're like about to leave early game, or when you're at like mid game, it sucks, but it's not a huge deal because he's starting to drop off by that point anyways. Like in my first Ironman, he died in chapter 7, but he drawed a bunch of enemies to him in the process, and basically saved the run. Now that's like super specific, so I'm not gonna count that, but like kind of for like drawing the enemies. But the point is, he died in chapter 7, like like around middle of it, and I was able to get through it. So he like he did his job. He got you through early game, and again, that is really, really good. Being able to practically carry you through early game, and you get the Western Isles, and you can farm on axe users or whatever. Now, is it going to be top of S tier? I'm not really sure, but since we're talking about an Ironman, there could be an argument to be made. There could be an argument to be made. Okay, next up, Alan and Lance. They're pretty interchangeable, so I'm gonna tier them both at once. Pretty easy A tier for both of them. So what are the benefits? Well, you get them both in chapter 1. They're both Cavaliers. Cavalier is a really good class because of the rescue dropping capabilities. And FE6 and Binding Blade in particular is rewarding to those who can rescue drop effectively. Roy low on health and he's about to die. Well, you can send a Cavalier in, Kanto out of there, and then Roy's safe as well as your run. And you could save another super valuable unit, stuff like that. Now it's kind. I guess I'll call it. I'll give a bit of bias towards Alan. Like, I'd say Alan is like slightly better than Lance, I would say, but the thing is, like, as I said, they're pretty interchangeable. Alan starts with higher strength in general and has a higher strength growth. He also has a higher luck growth, which I think he has a higher luck growth, which does kind of matter, sort of, because you could get screwed by 1% crits if your luck isn't like decently high. Another really cool thing that people don't talk about with oh yeah, actually I should mention first, Alan generally has like higher speed and generally gets higher speed growth. Now here's the cool thing. What happens if one of them gets stat screwed on their level ups? Because that's exactly what happened in my second Ironman. Alan just did not get strength. He did not get speed. I think he got like 1 point of strength in like the entire early game. But And he kept getting skill, which is weird for him, because usually Lance gets more of that. But, here's a cool thing about them. One of them gets stat screwed. My Allen got stat screwed. Just use Lance. There's a lot of competition for the Night Crest in that you get in Chapter 8. Because you don't get your next Night Crest until, like... Oh, boy. You don't get your next Night Crest for a long time. Until, like, the end of Chapter 15. Or in Chapter 16, if you fail to recruit Percival. I'll get into that later. So, they're like... So yeah, that's another thing. It helps prevent you from getting RNG screwed. Because you can't RNG scum or any nonsense like that. It's an Ironman. No resetting, no save states, none of that. But yeah, they're really solid. They're not super flashy about what they do, but they don't need to be good. Okay, Walt. I'm not gonna put him in meme. I'm not gonna put him in meme. Shit. I'm not gonna put him in meme tier. I'm gonna put him in really niche, and here's why. The reason why is simple. He can do chip damage in early game, potentially, assuming he doesn't miss. That's like his main use. He can do chip in the early game, which actually is kind of valuable. Because one rounding in Binding Blade, especially in early game, is a rare commodity. Which means your units, even your best units in the early game, aside from Marcus, are not gonna one-round enemies. Even Rucker won't one-round enemies without his killing edge, and you want to save that for Chapter 7, if possible. So like, you know, you got like for example, there's like the fighters in Chapter 2. Well, there's like fighters in Chapter 2, I guess, for instance. You can, if Marcus is like occupied with something else, like with another enemy, or he's rescuing someone or something like that, you can, you don't have any like reliable kill options except for Deke, but even then, this is a bad example. Chapters 3 and 4, I'd say, are where he's most useful. Because he can do... First of all, he can attack at 2 range. Now, he's stuck at 2 range, which is god-awful for GBA archers. That's, like, the main reason they're bad. Because they have no enemy phase. But in Binding Blade... That's not as big of a deal, because Binding Blade is mostly a player phase oriented game, and what I mean by that is you're gonna want to do most of your damage on player phase. Now, in a game like FE7 or FE8, enemies are weak enough and you're durable enough that you're gonna want to do most of your damage on enemy phase. So, because they'll have them, like, go into you and basically get themselves killed. FE6, enemies are bulky enough that you can't get away with that. And if you can't get rid of an enemy during player phase, then they could become a problem. So, Walt can help with that. It's great. As far as the survivability is concerned, not good. Although, with that being said, there have been a few times in Chapter 4 where, like, I know I'm not going to use Walt for the rest of the game. Except for, like, maybe Chapter 5. So, if I'm in, like, a real dangerous situation, I can sack Walt. And I know that seems cruel, but this is the Ironman, and if someone's going to die, it might as well be him. Or Merlin is preferably, but if that can't happen, then Wolt. So, Wolt has his uses, but it's mostly in, like, early game. And even then, only sometimes. Boars. He's yet another super niche character. Now, is he better than Wolt? That much, I'd say no. I'd say he's actually worse than Wolt. I don't know if it may or may not be controversial, but I'd say he's worse than Wolt for the simple reason that his entire job is to take hits from enemies. He cannot take hits from enemies very well, especially axe users, which there are a lot of in the early game, mind you. So, like, here's the deal. His speed is incredibly low, and yes, I know his speed growth is like 40, which is surprisingly high, but like, you have to actually train him in order to take advantage of that, and even then, you could get speed screwed. His base speed is 3, which means he's getting doubled by so many things, and he will never double, ever. Well, in early game anyways. Which, that's the only part that actually matters in Boris' case. That's the only reason I haven't put him in meme tier. It's because he joins in Chapter 1. In Chapter 1 itself, he's useless, pretty much. You just have him go to the bottom village, and that's it. And even then, you could have Wolt do it, instead if Boris didn't exist. So, like, whatever. So he's useless in Chapter 1. In Chapter 2, I'd say this is his best application, easily. In Chapter 2, in Turn 1, there is a specific strat where he takes part in a rescue drop strat to get Marcus on the fort at the start of Chapter 2 on Turn 1. And that helps you significantly because Marcus on a fort is basically invincible. And he does really good shit against the soldiers. The soldiers don't take the fort. It really helps. That's his best use by far. Other than that, there's like Chapter 4. He could potentially help. He could kind of help you get out of the starting area because that's easily the hardest part of the chapter is getting out of the starting area, I would say. But yeah, and past that, he's just dog shit. Don't bother. And I'm sticking with my guns. I'd say Wolt's is slightly better. But I do have to give Boris credit for the rescue drop strat in Chapter 2. Alright, Ellen. Okay, I didn't think of how to deal with healers in this one. So, healers. Ellen is weird because I'm tempted to put her in good replacement unit. Because if one of your healers, like Saul, dies later on, like if all your healers are dead, like Ellen's a healer herself, so she's definitely not a bad unit. But at the same time, she's definitely the worst healer in the game. So it's like, okay, easy, just put her in replacement unit. But like, here's the thing: she's the first healer you get in Chapter 2, and she actually is very useful. And up until you get Clarine. And like even then, you can use her as like a second healer if you need one. I think I'll put her. I think my reasoning is this: I'll put her in C tier, in good replacement unit tier, because here's my reasoning. So Ellen is at her most useful in Chapters 2 and 3 because she's the only healer you get up until Chapter 4, and even then you get like half of Chapter 4, pretty much, like a few turns of Chapter 4. where you don't have chlorine. But once you do get chlorine, Ellen is still useful. She's just not as useful as the other healers. So I'm gonna stick with that. She's a replacement. She's useful in chapters 2 and 3. And then once you get more healers, if they die off for whatever reason, she's there. Okay, Deke. B tier is pretty much made for him, honestly. He's used in a lot of chapters, but he also drops off, like, around mid-game. So let's talk about his amazing early game first. So as I said before, one-rounding things, especially in early game, is a rare commodity. Deke is the only character, aside from Marcus and I'd say Rucker, who can consistently one-round things. Well, not consistent. Well, yeah, who can one-round things, and Rucker isn't even super consistent at it in early game until he starts getting levels. Because in Rucker's case, he just does not one-round things without the killing edge, and you want to save that. And even with the killing edge, you might run into some enemies that are just bulky enough to survive a killing edge, and you'd have to rely on a crit. Granted, those cases are rare. Deke, however, you don't have to use a killing edge for him to one-round things, and with Marcus, you don't want to one-round things because you want to give the kill EXP to someone else, like Deke or Rucker. He has an Iron Blade, and I'd say he's the only unit who can make like actually good use of the Iron Blade. The Iron Blade has a bit of shaky accuracy, but in like chapter 2, and it's definitely really useful for one-rounding enemies if you're like camping on the fort until the rest of your units get there. Because in an Ironman, you're not going to want to rush straight to the throne because you generally want to play it safe. And I know that if a unit dies on chapter 2, you can just reset the chapter 1, but like you don't like, do you want to do chapter 1 all over again and potentially get stat screwed or whatever? I didn't think so. So Deke is great in early game because he can one-round things, and more often than Rucker in early game, actually. And I never said he couldn't use Killing Edge. If you need a Killing Edge, Rucker give his Killing Edge to him. Like, he can make a decent use of it in Chapter 7, for example. Now once we get to, like, mid-game, to, like, you know, like Western Isles, that kind of thing, he starts to fall off a bit. Quite a bit, actually. His growths aren't super fantastic, and the bases he has, while amazing in early game, aren't quite as impressive in mid-game. But he never becomes outright awful, is the thing. In fact, once he drops off, if you don't have any other Hero Crest users, if you don't have any other Hero Crest users, by the time you get your first Hero Crest, or even your second, you could reasonably use it on him. That's, you know, like, that's a thing. But yeah, his early game is really solid, so I'm putting him here. Laud and Wade they're interesting units, so I don't know where to start here. So Laud is undoubtedly better than Wade, but because of the way I made these tiers, it's kind of awkward. I'm gonna put Wade here. I don't know whether to put him above Ellen or not, because on the one hand, healers are just automatically good, and so Ellen is automatically good. But on the other hand, you're not gonna actively engage in fights with healers, of course. You're going to do so with Lot, who is a fighter. You know, he fights. I don't really know what to do with him. His early game is alright. Like, his early game is alright-ish. But yeah, it's he's definitely usable, and the thing is, Wade kind of is as well. So let me go over the differences between these two real quick. So Wade is supposed to be the fighter with like the higher strength but lower speed and skill. But like here's the and like oh yeah, and Lai is supposed to be the more balanced one with like whatever stats all around, you know, like decent. It kind of doesn't work out that way, because both these guys, because they're using axes, have shaky accuracy. You're gonna hear me say that a lot, but these guys do have fairly shaky accuracy, and of course Wade has it worse. And that's another thing. Wade has like no speed. He's got, I think he starts off with like, I don't remember. I think it's like 5. Probably not even, yeah, I think it's like 5, which is just barely out of doubling range, and only then sometimes. Once you move on to like chapter 3 and onwards, yeah, the chapter after the chapter he joins, you actually have to worry about getting doubled. So that's a travesty. Oh yeah, and his Wade's speed growth doesn't help him either. It really doesn't. So like, here's the thing. Wade is a good replacement unit. But here's the thing. He's a good replacement unit for Lot, who is like alright-ish. Lot's skill is still questionable, but it's not as bad as Wade's. Lot's speed is whatever, and it's not as bad as Wade's. Lot's strength is like 1 point lower than Lot's at base. I mean, than Wade's at base. So yeah, Wade doesn't even have that advantage of being super strong or whatever. So yeah, that's... And on top of that, they both face some serious Hero Crest competition. And neither of them are very good candidates for it. Like, for example, like they face Hero Crest competition with Deke and Rucker, who are easily the two best users for the first one that you can get in chapter 7. Like, for example, I'm pretty much always use the Hero Crest on Rucker in order to make 8X more bearable, in order to make Henning more bearable. If you don't do that, and you don't give it to Deke either, and you instead give the Hero Crest to Lot or Wade, especially Wade, you're just screwing yourself, honestly. Now, I am aware that Lot does get some pretty nice promo gains, but like at the same time, he's stuck with axes, and while the promo gains are good, the stats are still... And the alternative is making Rucker just an absolute beast of a dodge tank who just murders everything with his plus 30 crit. Or Deke, who gets access to 1-2 range, granted not very good 1-2 range, and ends up with just solid stats all around. So, and on top of that, whoever you give your Hero Crest user, you want them to do work with it. So obviously, if you gave it to Lot, for example, you're gonna have Lot do more fighting than usual, which puts him more at risk of dying. With Rucker and Deke, I wouldn't be as worried about him dying, but with Lot, he's in danger of getting doubled. And Wade especially is in danger of getting doubled. Wade is just bad, but he's usable, and he's a good replacement for Lot. But the thing is, Lot himself is just mediocre. He's just bleh. He's just meh. So I'm gonna keep these two together, but it's kind of awkward putting Lot here because, you know, good replacement unit. Good replacement unit for what? I guess for, like, I don't know, Gonzalez? I mean, not really, but whatever. Anyways, let's move on to an actually good unit, Shauna. Oh boy, this is actually tough. This is actually tough. So I'm gonna put Shauna. Yeah, I'm gonna put Shauna here. I don't know if I want to place her up higher than the Cavs. I'm going to leave her just. Here's the thing: the Cavs are mostly useful. They're at their most useful in the early game, I'd say. And then one of them starts dropping off because the other will have the Night Crest. And both of them just get outdone by Percival, I guess. I'm not sure where to put Shauna above them. I'm gonna talk about Shauna's qualities first, because she is a really good unit. But not because of her fighting. In fact, her strength stat is very bad. It's pretty bad. And due to her being super light, that's both good and bad for her. I'd say mostly good. So Shauna has a pretty freaking high speed stat, even at base. And her speed growth also helps. So there's a certain point where, like, you can stop using Slim Lances and upgrade to Iron because the speed sort of cancels out the problem with her con, which is that she gets way down. Like, her con is 4, and the basic Iron Lance weighs 7, so she loses 3 speed off of it. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad in early game. But, like, as you go along, you get more speed, most likely, and then, like, that 3 speed doesn't really matter, especially when especially once she promotes to a Falco Knight. She can use swords. She can use Iron Swords, which is amazing in Western Isles. Which, that's the thing, like, there is no competition for the first Elysian Whip that you can get in Chapter 8, because she's literally the only flyer you have. That's another thing. She's literally the only flyer you have until, like, Chapter 11. No, wait, not 11. Until, like, Chapter 10, regardless of the route you're on, I think. I've never been to Route B on Western Isles, though. And even then, like, Tate is a pain in the ass to recruit. But at the same time, you want to serve as insurance for if Shauna dies. And that's another thing. Shauna is very, very frail. She actually died in early game on my second Ironman. And I went without a flyer for a while. But as I went along, it became very clear to me just how valuable Shauna was and what I was missing out on. I was missing out on a lot of flying utility. In, like, Western Isles, for instance. That was on chapter 9, Falco Knight Falcon Knight Shauna is really good in Chapter 9. Assuming you know what you're doing in the fog. But, you miss out on a lot. In fact, you know what? I'm actually gonna put her above... I'm actually gonna put her above the Christmas Cows because... Here's the thing. If one of these guys dies... It really sucks. It does. But, like... It's not as crippling as if you lose Shauna in early game. Because I've experienced both instances. I lost both my calves in my first Ironman and was stuck with Noah and Trek. It sucked, but I managed. At least for a while. With Shauna, you flat out do not get another flyer until mid-game. I'll talk about Tate later, but between the two of them, if you have Shauna, you'll probably end up using Shauna more overall, especially since, like, you know, she's in early, like, you get her as early as Chapter 2. Training her up is a pain in the ass, but if you can do it, then she becomes amazing. Alright, Luke. Okay, so this is... What do I do with Luke? I just think... I'm not sure where to put him. And I think the music's messing up. I'll be right back. I'm back. YouTube paused itself because it couldn't handle such a banger. If you know what game this is from, props to you. Actually, I'm gonna put, if I can remember, I'm actually gonna write these down because I'm gonna put the links to these music in the description because I hate when YouTubers don't do that. Let's see. Sorry. Feel free to rant in the comments that I'm taking too fucking long. I actually forgot what the fucking second song that played was. I'll figure it out later. No way I remember. Alrighty, let's keep going. Okay, so Luke, what the hell am I gonna do with him? So he could go in either of these here's, as like, so he serves about the same purpose as Volt, which is that he does some chip damage. But I cannot, in good faith, put Luke in the really niche tier because he is more than that. Luke is by no means a super amazing god tier unit or anything like that, but I'd say he's all right. So when you get him in the early game in a pretty out of the way village in Chapter 3, I'm not really going to. Oh yeah, for the record, I'm not gonna really take into account like recruitability for the most part. There will be exceptions, which I will get to when we get to those cases. But Luke, when you get Luke, he does solid chip damage, and unlike Volt, he's got a pretty accurate weapon in the Fire Tome. It's got a whopping 95 hit. That's the same accuracy as Roy's Rapier, for reference. So like, now I have had Luke miss from time to time, and it has fucked me over. But But I'd rather rely on Lug than to rely on Volt easily. So I made my case clear. He's better than Volt. Okay, so what else? So what exactly makes him stand out? Well, first of all, he uses magic. He will be your only magic user for a good while, actually, until chapter 8. And by the time you get through chapter 8, the most difficult chapters is, basically already over. Like Lilina doesn't contribute in chapter 7 because she doesn't show up in chapter 7. So like he does good chip throughout the early game, and that's pretty much it for early game. But unlike Wolt, I don't bench him the moment I have access to prep screen. And once I get a guiding ring, one could potentially argue that you could promote Lug, because the promo gains are actually pretty great. He gets a lot of magic out of it, and I think he gets a decent amount of HP as well. But the most important part, I'd say, is that he gets access to staves. So why is that a big deal? Well, you basically have two broad options when it comes to using your first guiding ring. Either use it on your healer like Sol or Clarine if you're really training her like I do. And basically make them better healers. Like, Sol gets him closer to A rank, which is pretty important because the warp staff is amazing. Or you could give it to Lug and have another healer in case one of your primary healers dies. So in a sort of weird way, he's a good replacement unit for your other healers, but he also kind of does its own thing. So I'm actually gonna put him at the top here because like I said, he's a good replacement unit. If you use the guiding ring on him rather than your healers, that's a big if. Then if one of your primary healers dies, you can use Lug. That makes Ellen a bit less relevant, I would say, but not enough to knock her down lower than the Axe Bros, I'd say, because like, you generally want to have like 2 healers, I'd say, on the map at a time. Exceptions apply, of course, but in general, you'll want 2 healers. Your 2 primary healers will probably be Sol and Clarine. And if one of them dies, which they very well could, because they're very frail, and Sol has god-awful luck, which means crits, assuming he doesn't get one-shot anyways, you can use Lug, if you promote him anyways. And not only that, but either I got blessed in my first Ironman, or like, he actually has pretty good attacking power when he's promoted. On that note, let's move on to Clarine. So, what am I gonna do with her? I'm debating whether to put her here or here, because I am heavily biased towards Clarine, because rescue dropping is... I fucking love rescue dropping so much. And she can heal? Sign me up! But at the same time, she starts with D rank staves. So that means she has to use the heal staff or whatever else 50 times to get the C rank. Then 50 more times to get to B rank. And during that process, use the guiding ring to get to A rank. That is if I want to use warp staffs with her. That's a thing. Guiding rings are very rare in the game. they're very stingy with guiding rings. Your first guiding ring comes in chapter 8. Yeah, your first guiding ring comes in chapter 8. And there's some competition for it. The best user is probably Saul, because it gets him closer to A rank. But we're not talking about an efficiency run. We're talking about an Ironman run. And efficiency is not type priority. Keeping your units alive long enough to do... Keeping your units alive is your main priority, pretty much. That gives rescue dropping a lot more viability, I would say. Rescue dropping has saved my ass so many times. And I've even incorporated it into my strategies. Where, like, I have a frail but strong unit attack an enemy. And then, on that same turn, have Clarine or someone else rescuing Kanto out of there. I do that all the time. And that is very valuable. You don't get another healing, you don't get another troubadour in the entire game. Your next mounted healer isn't until, it's not until Cecilia, and that's mid-game. So I'm actually, call this controversial, but I'm gonna put her definitely not up here. Oh god, where do I put her? I'm gonna put her here, because there are plenty of other mounted units who can do her job and attack, or in Shauna's case, she can fly, which is even better. So Clarine has rescue dropping shenanigans to be had, and that in itself is amazing. And she can heal, but something to keep in mind, her healing is not as good as Saul's healing. Because her staff rank is D rank, unlike Saul's C rank. And they're only 2 chapters apart, so you can't say, oh, I'll grind her up before Saul or whatever. You do. Reinforcements do. And by the way, there is some... I did forget about this. There is some incentive to hurry the hell up in chapters, and that's reinforcements. For example, in chapter 5, if you take too long, if you do what I do and take the scenic route and get Gant's Lance and buy door keys, I get a bunch of experience for my unit, which is great, but you also risk having to deal with the brigand reinforcements that pop up in those forts near your starting position. And there's also the brigands in the forts near the castle, but it's not it's not hard to block them off. But yeah, Clarine, rescue dropping plus healing, pretty great. Alright, Rucker. Yeah, pretty obvious where I'm gonna put him. No, I'm just joking. I'm gonna put him up. Okay, so damn. Okay, so if I were talking about a normal, like a like a normal, more casual playthrough, I would put Rucker in 2nd place, probably. 2nd place, or even 1st. But in an Ironman, S tier is pretty much just... You're gonna miss out on a lot if you lose any of the S tier units. In fact, losing Melody in chapter 21, that basically cost me my Ironman, because I invested a lot into her, like boots, especially boots. And so what? So the question is, what do I lose out on if, say, I were to lose Rucker immediately in chapter 4? Quite a lot, granted, but what do I miss out on? Well, assuming he's holding his killing edge when he dies, which he very well could be, you lose out on that. That really sucks. Because that killing edge could be going to, like, one of your Cavaliers or Deke instead. What else do I miss out on? You miss out on Swordmaster potential, but Fear exists, and you could use her as a replacement unit in Chapter 9. But on the other hand, Rucker is a huge help in the early game, and Fear is not around in early game. Now, Marcus, what do you miss out on if you don't have him? People have tried to go through early game without Marcus, and yes, it's possible, but it is a fucking nightmare. And keep in mind, early game, really difficult. You have to deal with Chapter 4. You have to deal with the wake-up call of Chapter 1, though. Once you get used to it, it's not so bad. You have to deal with Chapter 4 and Chapter 7. 2 of the most difficult chapters in the entire game. And Chapter 5 is no pushover either. Chapter 5 is pretty difficult in its own right, I'd say. And if you don't have Marcus, then, like, what units do you have to tank hits? You've got... not Boars, because Boars' durability is actually god-awful. Like, well, not god-awful, but, like, he dies at about the same rate as your more frail units. Like, you don't... So, yeah, I'm gonna put Marcus at the very top, because this is an Ironman tier list. Okay, so, what next? We got Saul. Saul is a healer. A really good healer. Now, with that in mind, where do I put him? Tough choice. Pretty fitting music here. I don't know where to put him. I don't want to risk underrating healing, because healing is really important. I'm gonna stick with... maybe there. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that. So, what do I think about Saul? Best healer in the game. Definitely best healer. But we're talking strictly about healing. Did I write something down? Okay, so... in terms of strictly healing, Saul is the best. Also availability. He joins in Chapter 5. You know, of course, Nime's better at healing, but she doesn't join until basically endgame. So he can... so he starts off at C rank. What does this mean? Well, it makes it much less of a slog to get one of your healers to A rank before you get the warp staff in the desert chapter, in Chapter 14. And let's see. Yeah. So he is... music's a little distracting. So he starts off with decent magic. I think it's like 7, something like that. Clarine starts with 2. That's just 1 more than Ellen's. Clarine's being carried pretty hard by the fact she's mounted. So let's see. So Saul is just a good healer. And a very popular strat on how to get warp staff rank is actually to get Saul, use a healing staff like 50, use a healing staff or whatever else like 50 times to get him to B rank, and then promote him with the first guiding ring in order to get him to in order to get him to A rank, aka warp rank. So that's really solid. Now, a lot of people put him pretty high up on the list just because of that. Because the fact that he can use light magic is close to irrelevant. If you promote him with the guiding ring as soon as you can, you don't even have access to light magic because the game doesn't even give you the opportunity to get lightning tomes until like, well, 10A if you're doing the A route. I don't know about B route. And another thing, in an efficiency run, for sure, Saul is better. But if you train Clarine instead, and train her staff rank a bunch by healing a bunch, with like with like a bit of grinding, she can also get warp staff. She can also get warp rank. Now, granted, she's not as good as actually using the warp staff because her magic is just her magic growth isn't actually all that impressive. I think it's like 35. Saul's magic is overall just better. By the time you get the warp staff, I wouldn't be surprised if his magic was like around 20 or something like that. So that's 10 warp spaces. Well, maybe not that high. I don't know, but better than Clarine's. I'll be right back. I'm gonna change the music. I like this music, but it's distracting. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. That music was starting to get on my nerves. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, Saul, good unit. So Dorothy. Oh god, what do I do with her? Niche. She's going in niche. I actually rank her up higher than Wolt because, yes, I know she joins later than Wolt. Wolt joins chapter 1, but like, I never find myself actually training Wolt. I tend to either use my Deathfather in chapter 4, if needed, or if that doesn't happen, I haven't leveled him up too much because I barely even use him. So Dorothy just ends up with better bases. That's about all she has going for her over Wolt. What I'm about to tell you that Dorothy can do, Wolt can do pretty much the same thing, honestly. And that is shooting wyverns in chapter 7. And even then, it's pretty iffy. Both their accuracies are shaky, and wyverns are bulky enough that they just, don't die from it. I think they take probably like half damage from it. So, good damage, but But it is really important to take down the wyverns. I will give them that. There's not much to say about Dorothy past that. That's pretty much all that I have her do. I have her maybe do stuff in chapter 7. But even then, there's another unit that I want to talk about who can do the same thing. Granted, there's a bit of a drawback to it. Let's talk about Sue. So, Sue. Nice music. So let's see here. So I don't know where to put Sue. I'll put Sue... I'll put Sue here. With Ellen, in Ellen's case as a replacement unit, there's a lot of potential healers you can get in the game. So yeah, there's a lot of potential healers in the game. You got Clarine, you got Sol, you got Lilina or Lug if you promoted one of those two. Stuff like that. In Sue's case, she's pretty good in her own right, and the only unit that she could possibly... here's the thing. you can definitely make a case that like you're more likely to have Sue be used as a replacement for Shin if he dies. Now Sue joins earlier, but Shin gets hard mode bonuses, so Shin is undoubtedly better. So if Shin dies, then you can use Sue. But Sue is not a bad unit. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could use the both of them, but there's a drawback. There's a drawback to that. And that involves the Sakai Ilia route split. So after you clear chapter 16 or 16X if you unlock that Gaiden, the game decides whether to go to Ilia or Sakai based on it looks at the Pegasus Knights that you have up to that point. So Shauna and Tate. And it takes the amount of EXP that they both gained, combines it together, and compares it against Shin and Sue's EXP that they've earned. Now, if you fail to recruit Tate, which I don't blame you if you fail to recruit Tate, like that could happen, then it becomes harder to go to Ilia, and you do not want to go to Sakai during an Ironman. Just saying. And so there's this weird thing where like if you recruit all four of the characters, if you recruit both Pegasus Knights and both Nomad, you recruit both Nomads, you need to manage your EXP wisely. And it's definitely easier to get EXP for the Nomads than for Pegasus Knights, because Pegasus Knights are just frail. But you don't want to get too much EXP for the Nomads, even though they're actually pretty good. Because if you do, then you end up going to Sakai and it sucks. So as a replacement unit, she's put in a pretty unique situation. Let's say Shauna dies, Shin dies, or you can't recruit him, or you can't recruit him, or something like that. So you have Sue as your replacement unit, but like you can't use her if you don't have Tate either. Like if you lose both Pegasus Knights, their EXP gains is considered 0 for the sake of the route split. So what you might want to do is to either not get a single EXP point with Sue, making her essentially useless aside from rescue dropping, or kill her off. So I'd say that's the main reason I put her below Lug, because just by using Sue, you could risk going to Sakai by accident, and you do not want to do that. Alright. So moving on, we got Jarrett. A lot of people like to say that, like, stat-wise, Jarrett is... Like, a lot of people like to say that Jarrett is just Marcus, but better, as far as stats are concerned, but, like, keep in mind, Marcus has been around since Chapter 1. Jarrett doesn't show up until Chapter 7, and he's one of the main reasons that Chapter 7 is a pain in the ass to begin with, because you gotta recruit him before he green units himself, before he kills himself, because he's a green unit. It's not a fun time. But once you do get him, he's pretty good. I'm gonna put him right at the top of good replacement units, and here's why. You can use him alongside Marcus. It's completely reasonable for you to do so. But he does of course drop off in a similar fashion to Marcus. Something else to keep in mind is that he has slightly lower skill stat than Marcus. Doesn't sound like a big deal, But keep in mind, we're talking about a game with 2 RN, which means that like those, I don't know, those like 5 displayed hits that you're losing out on also affects 2 RN, which makes it more drastic than you might think. It could be the difference between missing and hitting a Silver Lance kill or whatever. You need him to recruit Juno, but well, you don't need him specifically, but he is one of the units you can use, but like by that point in the game you don't want to use him anyways. Also, Juno sucks. So next units. Trek. Trek. Okay, so how am I gonna do this? Trek, to put it bluntly, sucks. He's not stupid niche, because just being a Cavalier already makes him versatile. So I'm gonna put him, now call this weird, but I'm actually gonna put him between Lot and Wade, and here's why. If my best axe user dies, I don't necessarily need an axe user to replace him. If my axe user dies, and I need like just you know, like a whatever physical attacker, I will take Trek over Lot. I mean, over Wade. Actually, I might put him over Lot. I might do that, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna do that. So here's the thing. Trek fucking sucks. His stats are, I guess, supposed to be more defense-oriented compared to Noah, but, like, it doesn't really work. Because his defense is just meh, and everything else is bad. It's a shame, because I think he's pretty funny as a character. Also, again, pain in the ass to recruit in Chapter 7, which could lead to your units getting killed. And do you really want to lose, like, I don't know, do you really want to lose fucking Sue or whoever over because Trek is running off being a green unit? I didn't think so. I'm putting Trek over Lot and Wade simply because he's a Cavalier and can do rescue drop things. And there's actually some pretty cool niche stuff he can do with him. In fact, you know what? I'm actually gonna put him in niche tier. Because as a replacement unit, even as a replacement unit in my first Ironman, I noticed that he was just meh. Now when I say he's really niche, I do mean he is really niche. And here's what I mean. So here's the thing. When you promote your best Cavaliers, you know, like Alan or Lance, their constitution goes up. And as a result, their aid goes down. That means they can rescue less units. Most notably Gonzalez, because Gonzalez is incredibly heavy. Something I tried doing in the final chapter a couple days ago in my latest Ironman is I actually deployed Trek of all characters because he is the only unit that I had that was able to carry Gonzalez, because Shauna was dead and everybody else was didn't have enough aid. I never ended up taking advantage of that, but it is something incredibly niche you can do. And as a replacement unit, he's kind of bad. There's that. Now Noah, he's going up. This is definitely a tier difference. Noah is actually all right. He's not super amazing or anything, but if one of your Cavaliers is dead, Noah's not a bad replacement. You definitely wish that that Cavalier didn't die for sure, but Noah can get the job done decently fine. In fact, I made pretty good use of him in my first Ironman up until he died in chapter 13. So like I got some mileage out of him, at least for a little while. He basically just can do whatever Alan and Lance can do, but worse, because his bases aren't very good at the point you get him in the game, which is in like chapter 7. And again, you do have to risk your neck to get him. Actually no, that's a lie. It's actually not hard to recruit him. It's mostly just Jared, and especially Trek, that's a problem to recruit. Noah's just right in front of the arena. In fact, I'm tempted to put Noah above Luke. At the same time, Luke's got that early. Yeah, no, Luke's got the early game utility. I'm gonna keep him above Luke. Actually, with that in mind, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, because Jared's not too valuable when you get him. All right, so Lilina. Oh boy. Whatever I pick, it's probably gonna be controversial. So I love using Lilina. She's one of my favorite units to use, and I got incredibly speed blessed with her. She actually capped her speed and carried me all the way to endgame. And well, not carried, but like she did really, really good. Best combat unit, even more so, possibly more so than Rucker. But I'm not gonna consider that for this list because her speed is actually dog shit in normal circumstances. I just got really lucky. So what can I say about her? Well, her bases are not very good for the point you get her in chapter 8. She's supposed to be like, you know, a growth unit. Her only decent stat at level 1 would be her magic. I think it's like 8 or something like that. And it's a thing. So dang. It's tough to put her in a good spot because like as far as like good replacement unit goes, I could see that happening. Let's see. Okay, so in an Iron Man scenario, you do want to train up a decent amount of units. There's like 2 main strats, which is either go all in on your strongest units, and if they get fucked, well, you're fucked. But at the same time, you're less likely to lose those super strong units or whatever. Or you can go a safer route in Iron Man by training up more units, but overall they're not as strong as they could be, as your strongest units could be. And with Lilina, she's really good. Well, not really good. She's pretty damn good if you do train her, because her magic can go sky high, and her res also helps with druids, which not a lot of people talk about about the druids thing, but that does factor. But you do need to put in a bunch of investment. At the same, training her up can be a bit tricky because she's super frail, just in general. Even when trained, she's super frail, and survivability does factor in quite heavily, I'd say, on this list. That's probably not a good spot. I'm gonna put her at the bottom of replacement units here because she can act as a replacement if Luke dies, or like it's really hard to choose because like mages in general, because the 2 mages are just not very good. Luke is good as Chip at the start of the game. Lilina can't even do that. So My reasoning is this. My reasoning is this. If you lose a magic unit that you are training, like an offensive magic user, granted, I'm not sure which one you'd pick, but if that user dies, you can grind Lilina to the best of your ability, and then she can be pretty good. But you'd have to do a lot of catching up, and that EXP you could use for Lilina could go to other units. And putting her in the arena is very risky. There's not very many arenas in the first place anyways. Alrighty. Anyways, now we're gonna go back to the super obvious picks. Worst unit in the game. Well, maybe not as maybe not as bad as Sophia, but she's god-awful. People know, it's pretty well known that Wendy is just a big old meme. She doesn't have the small early game utility that Boars has. She can't wall things like Barth can, kind of. She doesn't have any strength. Her growths are actually pretty bad, despite her being a growth unit. Like, for example, speed growth, nah. So, yeah, worst unit in the game. Well, maybe worst unit in the game. Second growth, I don't know. Ironman or not, it doesn't matter. She's awful. Barth is a little bit more tricky. Because Barth is a big ol' meme, for sure. Barth, big ol' meme. But I can see Barth being used in incredibly niche situations, potentially, when you get him. Like, choking point in, like, chapter... Well, no. Actually, no, he's not very good even then, because Western Isles is full of axe users. He's not very good at handling axe users, despite his sky-high defense. So I could put him at the very bottom of really niche, I'd say, but I don't feel incredibly comfortable doing so. Barth is very bad, is what I'm saying. Oh boy. OJ, Ogier, whatever. Armor Slayer. Yeah, Armor Slayer. That's his best attribute. But I never actually ended up using OJ because Deke himself drops off and he's still better than OJ. OJ's stats are actually worse overall than Deke's base stats. And OJ joins in chapter 8. So yeah. But you cannot deny that he does give you an Armor Slayer, and that it's pretty nice to have for sure for Elegance. So as a replacement unit, I don't know where to put him because I've never actually used him. We're kind of getting into more forgettable, obscure characters that I just don't use really. I'm gonna put him below Lilina. And the reason why is because, like, he's the unit that he's meant to replace, Deke. Deke starts to drop off around the point in the game where you get OJ anyways. Or soon after, either or. So it's not like OJ would get much time to shine anyways. Okay, Fear. Fear? Yeah, no, definitely replacement units here, for sure. In fact, top replacement unit here. In fact, you know what? I might put her up here, actually. No. I'm gonna stick with good replacement unit because, she's meant to be a replacement to Rucker, I'm pretty sure. And she does the job pretty well, actually. In fact, one thing she has over Rucker, actually, is that she has higher luck. Yes, seriously, I'm not joking. Rucker's luck is pretty awful, and he fights a lot. So the small crit chances that he will occasionally have to deal with, are pretty terrifying. So there's that. If Rucker dies, Fear is not a bad unit by any means. Is she as good as Rucker? Hell no. But is she a really good unit nonetheless if you train her? Yes. In fact, Chapter 9, the chapter where she joins you, is pretty much designed around training her. Anyways, hopefully we'll fill up B tier more now. Shin. I'll put him here. So, Shin. The hard mode bonuses he gets, they're really nice. Really nice. Now, he faces the same problem as Sue, where if you train him, you risk going to Sakai. I'm putting him below Deke, not quite because of that, but because Deke has the early game utility and Shin does not. If Deke dies early, then you really miss him. If Shin... Oh yeah, on top of that, Deke has pretty good survivability. Shin can take, some hits, but take hits kind of, but not very well. And keep in mind, he is stuck at 2 range. That's still a problem for him. Now there's practically no competition for the Orion's bolts because you can get 2 in Chapter 10A, for instance. And you only really need 1. In all honesty. You can keep a second one in case Shin dies and you want to use Sue. So, yeah, there's that. What else? There's I don't remember what I was gonna say, but Shin is pretty good because he's accurate. He's kind of accurate for Binding Blade standards, anyways. Bows are good against wyverns, which you do deal with a good amount of wyverns from mid game and especially end game. That's something. Okay, I've been waiting to talk about this guy, Gonzo. Gonzo here is actually really good. Well, not really good, but he's using a lot of chapters. Yeah. There's some chapters I agree with him. There are some that don't. Now, the way you get Gonzo, Gonzo's status or state or whatever depends on which route you go in. If you go to Route A, like I do. Oh, I've been saying this wrong the whole time. It's not. Okay, so in Chapter 10A, you can get Gonzo at, I think it's level 5. And he has C rank axes, which means he can use killer axes right away. There's a killer axe that you can get in Chapter 5. And if you keep that killer axe, which isn't hard to do because your only axe users up to that point are Lot and Wade, pretty much. Unless you're crazy enough to train one of your knights. Anyways, Gonzo makes pretty good use of it. Gonzo has pretty great strength and speed, especially strength. He missed the memo that skill is a stat as well, and his skill stat is questionable. Combine that with axes, and that can become a bit of a problem. That being said, it's not the worst thing ever because, well, the thing is, because he's got good strength when he joins. He attacks twice, naturally. A lot of the time anyways. And like when he does hit, it hits pretty hard, so he attacks twice. He'll probably hit once. He'll probably hit like one time, probably on like average. And his skill issue isn't really as big of a deal once you promote him into a berserker. It doesn't go away completely, but that's never the case with units except for like Rucker, who never have issues in the first place. So yeah, Gonzo is pretty great. Oh yeah, by the way, in B route, he starts off at, I think, like level 10 or something like that. But he starts off with D rank axes. People I've talked to argue that B route Gonzo is actually better because you can promote him immediately, and then he'll just go to C. He'll just go to C rank anyways. So yeah, there's that. Oh yes, also mountain climbing. Mountain climbing is cool. Something that I actually think is a bit underrated is that Gonzo can hang out on the mountain at the start of chapter 13 and stall the enemies for pretty much as long as he likes, because he'll just dodge everything, and he has a shit ton of health. If you give him an elixir or something like that, he will not die. He just will not die. So yeah, that's something great he can do. That's like a really cool niche, but I'm not gonna put him in the really niche tier because he could do stuff outside of that, especially once he becomes a berserker. Now Geese. I've never used him. So he's a pirate, which means he can walk on water like Jesus. The thing is, water walking isn't really like valuable at all in Binding Blade. I mean, he can get to the boss slightly faster in his joining chapter, but you don't want to because he dies to magic very easily. He can do water. He can like walk around in Water Temple, but like by the time you get there, Gonzo can do that too, most likely, because chances are you'll have promoted him into a berserker. So like, what's Geese got to do? So does he have a niche? He kind of does. He comes with a Brave Axe. And now the Brave Axe isn't really amazing because it only has 55 hit, which is pretty bad. But you do get the hit twice guaranteed. And it doesn't weigh Gonzo down at all. So yeah, Geese's best use is to give Gonzo his best weapon, pretty much. Now Gonzo can't use the Brave Axe right off the gate, actually. And not even like, I don't know, promoting early or whatever helps with that, because he'll be at C rank either way. Brave Axe is B. But you don't really need the Brave Axe too much anyways, but it could have its niches. Actually, no, I just thought of something. The best use for the Brave Axe that Geese comes with is actually to give it to Echidna if you're going A route, because you only get Echidna on A route. So there's that. So he's got the niche of having a Brave Axe. I don't end up using the Brave Axe too much though, because again, Brave Axe is kind of bad. The question is whether I put him above or below Trek. I'm keeping him below Boars for sure, because while Boars has like one specific niche involving Marcus, it's a pretty good niche considering it's early game. Granted, Chapter 2 is not that hard, but still. I might change my mind later, but I'm gonna leave Geese there. Because the Brave Axe isn't all that good. Rescue dropping is always good. Okay, Klain. Klain is actually a pretty damn good unit. Which you would think that I'd say otherwise, considering he's a sniper, which means he's stuck at 2 range, but... Talking about Binding Blade, and Binding Blade is a weird-ass game when it comes to its meta. So, I mean, what do I do? Like, I guess... Klain is just a real good unit. I'm gonna put him... I'm gonna put him just below Gonzo. Actually, I'm gonna put him just below Shin. Cause something I just remembered Shin has, that's high aid. I might be wrong, but I think that when he promotes, when his constitution goes up, so his aid. I don't remember though. I know that he can like have up to 18 aid. I think that's when he promotes. That's the thing. Not only does Shin have the benefit of being mounted and having more movement, but on top of that, he gets access to swords, aka 1 range, when he promotes. Klain never gets that. That being said, Klain has A rank, which means he can use killer bows right off the gate, and he has a silver bow with him, which is nice. Not only that, but he's a good candidate for the I forget the name of the of the divine bow weapon. I think it's like oh yeah, Murgles. He's definitely a good candidate for Murgles. Cause you're gonna be using him so much, he'll just naturally get the S rank bows. So and hitting enemies from a distance without risking being a counterattack. In a player phase game, that's actually a pretty good that's actually a really good deal. And with killer bows, he could potentially just flat out one-shot him. So that's really nice. Shin can do all that. Do all that, including the S rank thing, but you know, he could do more on top of it. So I'm gonna put Klain below him. But that doesn't mean he's not a good unit, because he is. Alright, Tate. So I'm gonna put him in a replacement unit here, but just because I do that doesn't mean you can't use both Pegasus Knights at once. Because that's pretty... you can do that. I'm gonna put her... This is actually a pretty tough one. I'm gonna put her just below Fear. If you lose Rucker, you really miss Rucker. Like with the you know, the store crits and all that crap. Well, if you lose access to flying, that also sucks because you can't do skips and crap, but in an Ironman, efficiency isn't the main goal. Killing enemies and surviving is the main thing. Shauna and Tate don't do either especially well. In the case of Shauna, you know what, actually, now that I think about it, I'm going to put Shauna below the Cavs because because again, efficiency isn't the main priority. Surviving is, I'd say. So, yeah, that's how we're doing it. So Tate. She's a pain in the fucking ass to recruit, regardless of the route you go in, but especially in 11A. How do you recruit Tate? Well, you go through this big-ass chapter as normal, which if you ignore the recruitments, it's actually pretty easy. Yeah, if you ignore all the side quests, but I'm assuming that you are trying to do the side quests because you get some really good stuff out of it, like the Orion's Bolt and Klain, which that's another thing. You have to recruit Klain. Klain is a bit annoying to recruit. You can do it, but It's definitely possible, but it's a bit annoying to do, especially if you want the Orion's Bolt from his Archer squad. But you might be forced. But it's like you don't need the second Orion's Bolt. You can just kill him and be on your way. In the case of Tate, if you want all 3 Elysian whips, so you can get an Elysian whip at the end of chapter 8, and you'll probably use that on Shauna, assuming she's alive. And then there's Tate. You have to chase her around the map while somehow managing to kill any of her Pegasus Knights, because you do want the Elysian Whip. It's more valuable than the Orion's Bolt that you could get from Clayton. Because you could use that Orion's Bolt to promote Tate, and then she'd be a pretty good replacement. She'd definitely be a pretty good replacement unit. But like the thing is, it's really difficult to do. And you could just kill Tate and be done with it. I wouldn't blame you. I'm actually gonna move Lou down here, because we're talking about these guys that's replacement units. Whatever. So yeah, fantastic. But like, if she does act as a replacement to Rashana, she's pretty great at what she does. She can rescue. Her con is slightly higher than Shauna's, so she doesn't have the benefit of being able to rescue Gonzo, which sucks. Okay. So, next units. I'm gonna rank Lalum and Elfin together. I've never played Route B, but I'm pretty sure I already know what Elfin's deal is about. So, Lalum and Elfin. Are they good? Hell yes. Am I gonna put them in the utility tier? The thing is, I'm tempted to, but at the same time, the thieves are like super specific. Like you recruit the reason you would use them is because, oh, this chapter has chests, or oh Narshan has a Delphi shield or something like that. And with Merlinus, he's just fucking weird. With the dancers, you're almost always gonna use them. In fact, yeah, you're gonna almost always use them. The question is, how high up am I gonna put them? I'm actually gonna put them very high up. It doesn't really matter, but I guess I'll put Blom just above Elfin, but again, doesn't really matter. You can call it a tie. So like, what do they do? Well, they do one thing, and they do it super well. They dance. Or bard, do bard things. Same difference. That's one of your units. Take another turn. Why is that so good? Why do people gush about dancers so much and how good they are? Because you pretty much change your entire strategy every turn just to take full advantage of their abilities. And yes, even in an Ironman, you don't even have to be super efficient with it to get really good use out of it. Even in an Ironman, it actually helps with survivability. Here's an example. You have a unit attack an enemy. They don't die in one round. Okay, fine. I'll dance for that unit and then have that unit attack again. Now that unit's dead and they're no longer a threat. Now the enemy's dead and they're no longer a threat. Or you could do this. You could have one of your cavaliers. You could have one of your mounted units attack an enemy. And then, like, I don't know, they miss or something. Because that could happen. No problem. There's a dancer nearby. So they dance for that mounted unit. And then that mounted unit rescues and runs away outside the enemy's range. And then you have some other unit drop off your dancer so their dancer could do whatever next turn. There is so much you can do with a dancer. It's unbelievable. You can this isn't as big of a thing, but like you can have Roy seize slightly earlier. Like if Roy is just too far away from the throne to like he's in the same turn, you don't have to wait a turn. Because, like, you could, you know, depending on the situation, you could have enemies on your ass while you're trying to get to the throne, so that turn could really cost you. It really helps, and I value them very highly just for that. They do one thing, and they do it very well. Alright, now for the, Aaron and Samson characters, like that archetype. So, Echidna and Bartray. I've never used Bartray, because I've never gone B route, but I have... So I'm just gonna go off of what I've heard about him. So take what I say about Bartray with a grain of salt. So Echidna is so if you go A route and go to arguably one of the hardest chapters in the game, 11A. Well, hardest because of the side quests. If you ignore them, then whatever. So Echidna is annoying to recruit because you have to deal with the ambush spawns, but they're not the worst thing to deal with. I don't know about Bartray. I think he like starts off as a green unit. I don't know if enemies go. I don't think there are any enemies that just immediately go for him or anything like that. But anyways, you only get one of them. So who's better? Based on my experience and what I happen to know about Bartray, I'd say Echidna is a bit better. The reason being, Echidna has a lot of speed, and he has access to swords. Swords are just more reliable than axes, but she can use axes very well regardless. Like she can use Brave Axe, for example, though if you don't want to, fair enough. You can use Silver Axes, but again, if you don't want to, fair enough. Killer Axes are a thing. So, where would I put Echidna? I'm gonna put Echidna... I'm gonna put Echidna just above Gonzo, because Gonzo is unreliable because he blocked the axes. It gets better with Berserker, but you have to actually get there first. Granted, it's not that hard to do if you're on B route. With Echidna, she's good. She's great right off the gate, and as far as dropping off is concerned, that can happen. I'm sure that can happen, but it's like you can make it like work. You can make her work for like the whole game. Same with Gonzo, I guess. So you know what? I'm gonna put Gonzo's gonna be put on top. And as for Bartray, here's what I know about him. He's a warrior, which means he has access to both axes and bows. Axes suck, but like I think he has like high strength, I'm pretty sure. And as for bows, the bows thing is pretty nice because it's good against wyverns. The downside is that chances are you already have good bow users like Klain and Shin, whatever. Possibly Sue. But Bartray's bow affinity does help, so I'm gonna put. Oh yeah, and his speed does suck. So I don't know if I'm gonna put him. I'm not sure if I'm gonna put him in replacement tier per se. I can't really do that in good conscience. I'm gonna put him. Again, I don't really know what I'm doing, so don't get mad. But I'll put him bottom of B. Wait, how many units left? Okay, we're getting there. Okay, Ray. Oh God, Ray. Where do I start? So Ray's stats are pretty mediocre in normal mode. Even though you think he would, he does not get hard mode bonuses in hard mode. And it's because, that's just simply because, like, he's on the prep screen. Unlike, say, Percival, who joins in, who happens to join player phase turn 1, there's a difference. So, like, he doesn't get hard mode bonuses, and his stats are kind of bad. And, so, like, but he's the only dark magic user for a good while. We don't talk about Sophia. So there's that, but at the same time, dark magic is, like, it's not very good. The best dark magic tome you can use, aside from, well, probably better than Apocalypse, is, like, Nosferatu, I guess, but here's the thing. With animatomes, you don't have to worry about being weighed down by them at all. Ray gets weighed down by a basic Flux tome because his con is shit. He only has 4. Flux is 5. And that wouldn't be a deal breaker, but his speed is already kind of bad. So is he just a meme? No. I'd say he's, like, niche. How niche? I will put him here. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. Cause, like, if you need magic, then, like, fine, whatever. If you're in desperate need of magic, there's that, I guess, but, like, Lilina and Ray and Luke are a thing. Granted, you'd have to train Lilina, but it's not much to say about Ray, honestly. He's pretty unremarkable, which is astounding considering he's the only dark mage user until Nime. Don't talk about Sophia. Melody and Percival. Alright, so let's start with Melody. Where am I gonna put her? Ooh, man, that's gonna be a tough one. Should I put her above or below Rucker? I'm gonna put her just below Rucker. Because overall, I think that she's a better unit than Rucker. But availability is an issue. That's the only complaint I have against her. Availability. That's literally it. On that same note, Percival's going below Melody. Because he has the same availability problems as Melody, but he can't fly. So I guess I'll talk about Melody and I'll talk about Melody. So why in the hell is she so good? Okay, so first of all, she's a fucking wyvern. So she flies. Now her ability to rescue isn't, like, super good, like Shauna. In fact, if you promote her immediately, which I tend to do, and what I'd actually recommend, then her constitution is 10, which is good for wielding weapons, but bad for rescuing because her aid is also 10. So there's a lot of the units that she can't rescue. She's pretty bad at rescuing. So that's for a mounted unit anyways. So there's that. So what's good about her? Well, she flies, which means she can fly over terrain in order to engage more dangerous enemies and that kind of thing. She has access to killer lances immediately. That alone is fantastic, especially since you can get killer lances that same chapter. And probably the biggest thing of all, especially in an Ironman, she is incredibly tanky. Like, seriously, it's absurd how high her defense is. I'm pretty sure at base, combined with promotion, she's got like 20 defense, I'm pretty sure. It is incredible. And she never drops off throughout the whole game, ever. In fact, I'd argue that she gets better, because as you have to deal with more flying enemies, she can engage them. Oh yeah, and arrows, even without the Delphi shield, even without it, she can take arrows kind of well, actually, because of her stupid high defense. Those Harma bonuses are ridiculous. So, like, man, you really miss her if she dies. That's probably the reason why my Ironman died, because she died. But it took a long time for that to happen, that's for sure. And then Percival. So you have the option to either recruit him in Chapter 13 or in 15. There are several reasons why you would want to recruit him in Chapter 15. First of all, in Chapter 13, he doesn't get hard mode bonuses. And while he's still definitely good without him, it would be preferable if he had him. And yes, you get him 2 chapters earlier, but one, it's a pain in the ass to recruit him in Chapter 13, because you have to get Lalem or Elfin over to him. And by the time you do that, you don't have much. There's not much for him to do in Chapter 13. And he's god-awful in Chapter 14 because it's the desert chapter. And force units suck there. So, recruit him Chapter 15. It's a lot easier, and you get a lot higher reward for it. And when you do recruit him, there's not a single bad stat. They're all excellent. Not a single bad stat. And he's a paladin, which means rescue dropping. On top of that, he has A rank in both swords and lances. Which means killer lances and killing edges. And killer axes, because he has C rank axes as well. So whatever killer weapon you want to give him, go for it. I do not see a world in which Alan or Lance get lucky enough in their level ups to outshine Percival. He's that good. Again, never drops off, never falters at all. It is amazing. The only reason that he's below these 3 is because the bar is set so high on God tier. And his, and the fact that he is recruited midway through game does hurt him quite a bit. So there's that. Okay, Cecilia. Cecilia, interesting unit. So, she joins you in Chapter 14, which gives off a pretty bad impression of her immediately because it's a desert chapter and she can't really do much there. On top of that, she got her ass handed to her in a cutscene in Chapter 13, so that doesn't help her, but, you know, we gotta be objective. So, Chapter 14 is a slug, so you gotta get through it with Cecilia. Okay, fine, whatever. So, how good is she outside of that? Once you get past Chapter 14. Pretty great, actually. I pretty much always use her. Yeah, I almost always use her after I get her. Now, if you train Clarine, then Clarine's gonna generally have better stats than Cecilia, because Cecilia's stats are kind of bad. But the utility is the main thing. The utility is the main thing. So, it's like... So what can she do? Well, she has A rank anima, which means that if you're not using any other anime magic users, which I don't blame you if you're not, because the anima users that do exist are kind of bad. So she's a potential for Blaze user. So there's that. She has C rank staves. So that means that she can do, like, you know, pretty good healing. And she can use Recover if her magic stat fails her in that department. I forget when you get one though. Anyways, I think I'm gonna put her in I'm going to rank her. Call this controversial, possibly, but I'm gonna rank her. I'm gonna rank her above Deke. Because the potential. Here's the thing: you don't have to train Cecilia at all for her to do what she does. That's her best. That's her best quality, easily. Don't need a trainer. So that's where I'm gonna go with. Sophia! Oh boy. Nah. I'd argue that she's actually worse than Wendy. Now this might be my bias showing, because training Sophia is not fun. Training Wendy kind of is, because it's funny. So what's wrong with Sophia? Her constitution is dog shit. She gets weighed down by everything. All of her stats, not a single stat is good. Her magic is like maybe almost sort of good, but even then, no, not really. So she's a growth unit, right? No. Her growths are actually pretty fucking bad. Seriously, look them up. It's great. It's fantastic. And there's not much I can say about her. Well, she can get a guiding ring. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, I'm tempted to put her at the very bottom of really niche, just because of that. It's very tempting. I mean, let's see. Assuming that you're not training Luke or Lilina. Honestly, you could get away with only having the first guiding ring if you use it on Saul. I'll place her above Wendy just because of the guiding ring. That is literally the only thing. And even then, try not to get her killed on the way to it. Because she's the only unit that can get the guiding ring in the desert chapter, by the way. Alright, I agree. Her stats are about on par with Claims, despite joining quite a few chapters later. She joins at the beginning of chapter 15. I definitely call her worse than Claims just because of her availability alone. And the fact that her stats aren't much better than his, but that doesn't mean she's bad. She's definitely not bad. She's a good replacement unit as well, if you're into that. I don't know much about Bartray again, but I'll put I green below him, I guess. Alright, Garrett. So you think that I just put him in the replacement unit here because, oh, he's basically just Gonzalez but worse. And yeah, he is, for sure. But what's stopping you from using 2 Berserkers? Here's the thing. Garrett's not a bad unit. His speed sucks. But he's not a bad unit. Berserkers are gonna be good. Pretty much. Berserker is a really good class. Yes, they're not as good because axes, but like crits, baby. In fact, they might even actually. I might Actually, I'm gonna correct myself. Berserkers might actually be better in Binding Blade than in the other games because they have plus 30 crit as opposed to plus 15. I actually find myself using Garrett a decent bit. I might, but regardless, I think I'm gonna put him in replacement units here because here's my reason. Here's my thing. Here's what I'm thinking. So Garrett is
not in the same place. Your work can be. You just need Asana.
Hold on,
Asana
I'll be right
organizes
back.
work.
Alright, I'm back. Don't know if this music is fantastic for like background noise, but fuck it. Yeah, ad played. Yeah, so whatever. Anyways, so Garrett. You can use both Gonzo and Garrett, but there's definitely a lot of units that like aren't good enough in my eyes to. There's a lot of units that are good enough that like, you know, depending on deployment slots, you can just leave them out. Assuming you don't lose too many units, which very well could happen. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put Garrett top of replacement unit, and here's why. Bear is a good replacement unit for Rucker, but here's the thing: you have to train her in order for her to be a good replacement unit. In fact, hold on a second. So you have to do that. Garrett, no investment at all. And not only that, but he doesn't just have to be a replacement unit. You could just use him outright if he's free. If you got like free deployment slots and that kind of thing. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna rename this. I'm gonna rename this. Alright, we're gonna stick with that. So spare deployment slots. Basically, this here is now like, you know, like, okay, are there free deployment slots? Go ahead, use them. So I'm gonna rearrange this a little bit. I'm gonna put Lilina up here, Fear up here. Yeah, I'm pretty much. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with this pretty much. Yeah, I'm sticking with this. If you have spare deployment slots, use Garrett. Because Berserkers, really nice, and this Berserker needs no investment to be good. His speed is shoddy, but that's about it. Faye, oh boy. How the hell am I gonna do this? So Faye, Faye is the Manakete of this game. And if you aren't aware of how Manaketes work throughout the series, their stats are like really, really bad. But they generally have a Dragon Stone or a Divine Stone or something like that. In this case, Faye has a Divine Stone. That makes her stats really, really good. Until it breaks. The Divine Stone in Binding Blade has 30 uses, and there is no way to repair it. Not even you can't repair it with hammer, unlike literally every other weapon. Well, I haven't tried Firestone. That's another thing. There's a glitch that you can exploit where you get one of your units berserked, one of your thieves berserked, and they can steal a Firestone from a Manakete while they're berserked. I've never tried it, and I'm not going to consider it for this list. I'm gonna ban glitches like that. But yeah, Faye cannot reach her full potential unless you use Firestones, which you're not, under my rules anyways. I'd say Faye is niche, but she's got a pretty good niche. Her niche is here's the thing. Enemies do not look at the buffs that the Divine Stone gives her. they just see those puny little stats, and target that. So you can use that to manipulate the enemy AI. This could especially be useful on bolting mages. And funnily enough, you actually do get Faye at the start of chapter 16. Once her Divine Stone breaks, she's as good as useless, but up until then, pretty good. And you don't need to use up a Divine Stone to tank up bolting. You just need to have it equipped, which is nice. Next unit, Hugh. I mean, how am I supposed to rank this guy? How am I supposed to do it? So, Hugh is the Beowulf archetype. He's that guy who charges you like in-game gold to recruit him. But there's a weird caveat in binding it with this guy specifically. So his starting stats are alright. They're nothing amazing, but they're alright. He gives you an asking price of, I think, 10,000 gold, which is a lot. It's not like you're running low on gold per se, but there is something I want to mention in a sec that you want to save the gold up for. So, he charges you 10,000 gold to buy him. But you can negotiate with him. You can lower the price up to, I think, at minimum 5,000. And every time you say no, the asking price goes down by 1,000 gold. But all of his stats go down by 1 point, and his stats can be really fucking bad if you pay minimum price like I tend to do. So basically, if you plan on using him, you gotta pay the full price. But here's the thing. So he comes with a member card, right? Now, I'm not gonna consider it for the sake of this tier list, and the reason why is because you can just steal it off of him and then kill him if you don't want to bother buying his services, which could actually be the smartest option. I'm not gonna lie. I don't really like Hugh, if I'm gonna be honest. I don't know why. I just don't. So basically, I'm just gonna purely judge him on how good he is as a unit based on his stats. So you pay 10,000 gold, and what do you get? A mediocre unit. And like, if you got the guiding ring from the desert chapter, like, you could give it to him, but like, there are definitely better options. You could give it to Clarine. You could give it to Saul if you gave it to someone else already. You could give it to... Honestly, you could give the guiding ring to like anybody but him or Sophia. I mean, Sophia's dog shit. Ray can at least say that, like, he joins much earlier. Hugh doesn't have that. He's got mediocre stats, that kind of thing. And like, that would be fine, but you have to pay a ton of money for it. And again, you're probably not gonna have trouble paying him. But you'd want to save that money for boots. You can get boots in chapter 21 with that money instead. If you have the silver card with you, and the member card that you'll hopefully have just stolen from Hugh instead of buying him, you can just, like, I think you get like 2 boots out of it because they cost like 5,000 per pair, I'm pretty sure. You can get 2 boots. That's more valuable than an optimal base stat Lug. I mean, not Lug, Hugh. Am I gonna put Hugh in F tier? No. Is he super niche? Well, actually, no. No, I say he's like very bottom. I'd say the bottom of spare deployment slots. Well, no, I'll put him above OJ. In fact, I'll put him above Wade. But that's about it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Zeus. Okay, so Zeus, you have to, in order to get the good ending, you have to recruit him and keep him alive. For one of the guiding chapters near the end of the game. So with that in mind, how do you want to? So obviously you're going to recruit him if you're going for the good ending. The question is, are you going to use him? We're talking about an Ironman here, and what that means is, if he dies, for example, if you do what I did in my second Ironman, forget he's one of the requirements for the good ending, and get him killed in the arena, well, you kind of get fucked because you can't reset. So for the sake of the good ending, you're actually discouraged from using him. Now, if you do want to use him, and or you just don't care about the good ending, then what's good about him? Well, he's a Wyvern Rider, just like Melody. He's not near as good as Melody. God, no. But he's fine. He's alright. He's not amazing, but he's alright. In hard mode, he will have either 19 or 20 strength. That's like cap, by the way. Cap strength. His speed is meh. But easily the biggest mark against him is the fact that he starts at D rank lances. We're in late game at this point, because you recruit him in chapter 16. What makes it even funnier is that you have to use Melody to recruit him, and it's like, just use fucking Melody. So, with that being said, right there. Actually, no. Yeah, I think that's a good spot. So, he can fly. That's good. His rescuing ability, I think, is slightly better than Melody's, though I can't really recall for sure. If you can get past his lance rank, which really does screw him, because that means you can't use killer lances. When at this point in the game, most of your lance users can already use killer lances. As far as getting an Elysian Whip to promote him goes, you can just not use the one that you would have used on Tate for him, or you can get that. You can wait and get that Elysian Whip from that one archer in Ilya on the ballista. Though it's in a weird spot out of the way, you'd actually need the warp staff to get it. So that's fine. You have plenty of warp staff uses. So like it's fine. He's usable, but Melody just outclasses him in just about every way. And yes, I recognize you can use both, but if Zeus dies, which he very well could, especially from a stray arrow or magic or something like that, you lose a good ending. Douglas. I won't be taking the recruitment requirements too much into account, even though it is a pain in the ass, because you do need to recruit him for the good ending. And I guess I'm assuming that you're going for the good ending. So, Douglas, he doesn't have to stay alive once you do recruit him for the good ending. For the record, you simply need the requirement for the guiding chapter 16X is to have him stay alive and clear the chapter, which is annoying to do because he's an enemy unit and cannot be recruited until 16X. but you can use like sleep staff or whatever. Anyways, how good is he once you do recruit him? Well, he's god-awful in 16X, I'll tell you that much. He is... I believe I mentioned this at the start of the video. He is incredibly niche. I will put him... I'm actually going to put him above these guys. Because of that Sakai niche I told you about. And, like, he can do, like, some armoring things. Like, I could see him doing some walling in chapter 20 Ilya, which actually is a big deal because 20 Ilya can be a problem because of the enemies that come at you pretty much immediately. And Douglas is good for that because Douglas's bad movement isn't as big of a deal at the start of the map. So there's that. Alrighty, Nime. I know it says staple for most of the game, but I'm assuming, but I'm like staple for most of the game once they're recruited. That's like my deal. Call this lengthy, but I'm gonna rename it. Okay, so pretty ironic I'm putting Nime up here, but Nime is definitely going, well, it is very tough to place her because she doesn't join you until very late game, but her stats are really good. Her magic stat is very good, and and she's the best warp staff user once you do get her. Doesn't matter if you have Sol or not. Unless you get, like, stupid lucky with his magic level ups, which I don't think will happen. Maybe, I don't know. Kind of weird. I'll put Nime, like... Put Nime here, I guess, because once she is recruited, it is very difficult to... Once you do get her, you can do all sorts of warp and rescue strats. It's pretty crazy. That's like easily the best thing that she can do in my eyes, but she can also do healing with physic, and it's great. Alright, now Dayan. I've never been to Sakai, so I don't know what to say about him. I don't know what his stats are like, but he's a nomad trooper. So I'd say he's, pretty good, I guess. I hear that he's a pretty good pre-promote, actually, but... So... I'll just treat him like a typical pre-promote and put him in, like, I'll put him here over Z's, because, if Dayan dies, I won't lose bad ending, and if he's a good bow user, he could be useful in chapter 21. Can't say the same thing for Juno. Juno is, I'm gonna call her pretty freaking niche. Yeah, I'll for sure put... Yeah, I'll put her above Duck. I'll put her above Boars. No. So, like, Juno's pretty damn niche. Because her stats are just not good for the point you get her in the game. There's nothing too remarkable to say about her, in all honesty. Not only that, but... This isn't a huge... I'm not really going to count this too much against her, but one of the requirements for the Gaiden in the chapter she's recruited in is, well, you recruit her, and both she and Jarrett need to be alive. keeping Jared alive isn't too big of a problem because he's pretty bulky at the time you get him, and you're gonna be benching him soon anyways. Juno, there's not much to say about her. She can fly and stuff, which is, you know, so like she's not horrible. All right, two more units. We're almost done. Yoder, Yoder is meh. It's all right. It's not. There's not very good places to put him, in all honesty, because spare deployment slots isn't really an issue. Like, I guess I can put him there because there's a lot of deployment slots in endgame. And you don't have to worry about deployment at all in chapter 21. This is like super late in the game, so I'll put him in niche because there's not much that he can really do. I'll put him just below Roy because like Roy's niche is like getting some level ups and then wrecking house with the binding blade once he does get it, I guess. And then Karel. So Karel is a very interesting unit. Despite him being literally the last unit in the game, and you can only get him during the if you're on your way to good ending and have fear. His growths are actually super high, easily the highest in the game. However, he's level 19 Swordmaster, meaning he only has one level. Well, so much for the gimmick, I guess. So yeah, that's not really a factor. So I'm just gonna be purely looking at bases, which is his bases are pretty damn good. He's there to help you against the Manichees pretty much. You get you'll have one or maybe two Worm Slayers by the time you get to him, so you can definitely use those against the Manichees that you'll have to deal with for the rest of the game. And if you still have Durandal, which you probably will because you have to have Durandal just to get to chapter 22 or chapter 23. So Karel's pretty great once you do get him. But since he literally shows up for 2 chapters, 3 if you count final. Yeah, no, he's like super niche, but his niche is pretty great. Yeah, his niche is pretty good. In fact, I'm putting him above Boars because Boars' niche, while it's really nice in Chapter 2, that's kind of all he has for the most part. Karel can help out with the Wyverns a bit, with Durandal. But Chapter 23 isn't too ridiculous. It's not too hard. And as for the Manichees, he can help out with those. Anyways, I don't know, man. This is a list. I wouldn't be surprised if I sparked. Well, yeah, I want to see what you all think, honestly. Like, what would you change about this? Because here's the thing: there are some units that like I generally consider better than other units that are like lower on the list. Like for example, Karel. He's like real niche, but I would consider him better than like. He's like super niche, but I definitely consider him better than Dorothy and Walt. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Karel is, I don't know, it. Like, here's the thing. Overall, as a unit, I'd say that Douglas is like better than Boars, maybe. But like in an Ironman, it's like. You know, he's like real niche. These aren't quite meant to be like a, you know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever. And I guess I just kind of ended up just sort of putting them in categories, more or less. So this is I guess this isn't really like a super conventional tier list, but yeah. Tell me what you think. Anyhow, I'll see you next video. Although I might not be doing a whole lot. I might not be doing much recording at the moment because of Thanksgiving. I'll probably be busy. So, see you next vid, whatever it might be.